Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Magic After Dark. I just want to say thank you for the support on the last Minecraft creepypasta. I really appreciate it. And today we're actually going to be continuing the Alien book. And yeah, let's jump into it. All of a sudden, the world was spinning and London didn't know which way was up. Something had hold of his leg, and he was being dangled like a rag doll high into the sky, the rusty landscape whizzing by over his head. Then the sky and ground disappeared, and the world turned back, and he was being battered on all sides before plummeting into deepening darkness. The leaper landed smoothly on the forest floor, its powerful legs flexing to absorb the impact. It dropped London, and he tumbled to the loamy ground with a groan. He lay as he fell, face up, catching his breath after his dizzying ride. The creature stood over him, crouched on massive haunches and cocked its head, as though listening. London tried to catch his breath, his eyes never leaving the leaper. He had been turned around and was deep enough in the forest to have no idea which way was out. He still had his sidearm in his holster, but this monster didn't look like it would be much bothered by a few slugs. He tried his radio, whispering through clenched teeth, but he only got a few words out before the electronic squeal obliterated his message. To add to his problem, the alarm on his oxygen supply was trilling a 30-minute warning. After that, he was down to a 10-minute emergency tank. The leaper turned its dead, empty face to him. Talk about long odds, he thought. Son of a bitch, I think they're herding us into the forest, Katz said, slowly sweeping the barrel of his rifle across the wall of alien creatures surrounding them and forcing them back towards the forest of giant stalks. The Typhoon's not answering our distress call, Gilmore said. They can't hear it, Jepson said, speaking fast through fear. It's the Leaper. I think the floaters communicate using some sort of sonar like whales. The Leapers disrupt it with a counter frequency to confuse their prey. Our radios operate close enough to the floater's frequency to be affected. I've switched suit to suit comm over to another band, but it's only effective in close proximity. I don't think that's going to be an issue, Kat said. So here's the way I see our options. We try and shoot our way out now, and they kill us here, or we let them hurt us wherever, and they kill us there. London's voice cut briefly into the comm, saying one of them had grabbed him and he was okay before the shrill scream obliterated the rest of the message. Jepson gasped. He's alive. I guess if anyone's going to beat the odds, it's him, Gilmore said. They were on the move again, the leaper dragging London by his leg through the dark forest. The company assured crews that their EVA suits were made to stand up to any conditions, but he doubted being dragged by giant clawed aliens had been included in their testing protocols. Do or die, he thought. More likely do and die, but anything had to be better than being a pull toy for this nightmare. He reached for his sidearm but didn't dare draw it while he was being jostled about. It was the only weapon he had, and he couldn't risk dropping it. He didn't have long to wait. The leaper pushed past a giant stalk and into a clearing. London's heart sank. A floater had been brought crashing down in the forest, its massive carcass flattening the surrounding vegetation and serving as the hive for a colony of leapers. London couldn't tell how long the floater had been dead, but from the look of the gray, rotting flesh, it had been a while. London's stomach churned and he licked dry lips. No matter how he ran the game, he couldn't come up with a winning hand. He was outnumbered, and even with a good head start, one of these things could bring him to the ground with a few good leaps. He might be able to take a few of them down before they got him, but so what? He was starting to think it might be smarter to just turn the gun on himself and get it over with. London, do you hear me? Gilmore's voice crackled in his ear, half static and breaking up. He winced in anticipation of the answering squeal, but it didn't come. Gilmore, you guys okay? You reading to me? He said, his heart starting to pound even harder. The response was garbled, but the signal was improving by the second. They were still alive, but the leapers were herding them deeper into the forest. From the strengthening radio signal, they were headed this way. That was the good news. The bad was, the leaper once again grabbed him by the leg and began dragging him towards the gaping, rotting cavern of leaper flesh. If you're going to ride in to save my sorry ass, now would be a good time, he said, his voice hoarse. He pulled his gun. Fast as we can, Kat said. Think I'm going to have to start shooting, man, he said, just to talk and to hear another human respond. Still have your rifle? Gilmore asked. Negative. Broke it on one of their heads. All I've got is my sidearm. Okay, hang tight, Jepson said, sounding out of breath. From your signal strength, I think we're close. I ain't the one dealing this hand, he said. Crap. Okay, we're inside. Double time it, will you? Inside the floater was a world of deep shadows and even darker shapes moving through corridors and chambers of deteriorating flesh hanging from cathedral-high vaults of bone. He was being dragged through a thick, slimy sludge of rotted organic matter. Waiting on an update here, he said. Shut up, London. Gilmore's voice became crystal clear through his headset, and it was tense with suppressed panic. We're here. There's got to be 50 of them out here. And even more inside with me. Anybody got any ideas? Just one, Kat said. The first mate raised his rifle and said, Fire! And then he did, making a slow, wide sweeping arc with the laser through a clutch of leapers. The creature's mouth opened wide. Dripping secondary maws of deadly teeth protruded from their jaws as their bodies exploded into black and green bursts of flesh and acid blood. Look at them light up, Gilmore shouted and started shooting. Jepson added to the chaos as the surviving leapers erupted into a frenzied panic, like a nest of grasshoppers with a lighted match thrown into it. Unbelievable, Jepson said with a gasp. Aim for their bodies. The heads and limbs are armored, but the rest are easy targets. The leaper suddenly let London drop into the slime and turned to hop back the way they had just come. Then the rest of the leapers moving around in the dark were also racing for the exit. Rolling onto his stomach and then pushing himself onto one knee, London raised his gun and fired at the closest dark shape. Its body seemed to shatter and it collapsed. Bingo, he shouted and clambered awkwardly to his feet on the slimy surface. Just for the hell of it, he popped off 2 more of the bastards, then turned to make sure nothing was about to land on him in the dark. That's when he saw the nest. He switched on the small lamp on his helmet for a better look and saw, stretched between 2 of the towering ribs, a wall of floater flesh into which thousands of leathery and irregularly shaped objects had been implanted. He knew he should just get the hell out of there, but before he did, there was one thing he had to do. Katz was holding the remaining flashbang in reserve, waiting to regroup with London for use to help cover their getaway. The leapers obviously weren't accustomed to resistance, and the carnage the landing crew was inflicting on them was enormous. But there was still enough of them that if the leapers decided to rush them en masse, they wouldn't have stood a chance. The first mate was almost sorry he had allowed the thought to enter his mind, because the moment it did, the leapers' behavior began to change, almost as though they were adapting their tactics to this new, lethal opponent. They were spreading out, widening the distance between themselves, creating scores of individual, harder-to-hit targets, tightening the circles around them. London, he shouted. I'm coming, boss, London said, and I'm planning on leaving things hot behind me. Explain, Kat snapped. London grinned, moving as fast as he could across the slick, slimy surface. I got a backup oxygen tank and a gun. You do the math. A dark shape swept across his path. He lost his footing in the slime, but threw himself headlong toward the exit, sliding across the ground like a sled on ice under the shape and out into the open. "Heads up," he shouted, using the low gravity to push himself to his feet. The others were back to back, eyes on the surrounding leapers. London had already disconnected the small oxygen cylinder tucked into his pocket on his chest, and now he gently tossed it into the entrance. He took aim and fired, and missed with his first shot, and with his second. The third was even wider off the mark. "Geez, London," Gilmore snapped. "Out of the way." A couple of hops brought her to London. She raised her rifle and fanned the beam across the canister until she homed in on it and blasted away. The leapers started to move. Katz yelled something that was lost in the sweep of the concussive wave from the exploding oxygen tank, which sent them all flying. The blast ignited the ground cover, and the fiery heat seemed to transmit itself through the vegetation and the floater carcass without bursting into towering licks of flame. The blast was intense, and even before the humans had stopped tumbling, the leaper colony was in motion. But instead of pouncing on their stunned prey, they streamed as one into the smoldering carcass. "You said you found a nest," Jepson said, breathing heavily. "They must be trying to save the offspring." "Who cares?" London said. "Let's go while we can." "Anyone know which way we came?" Gilmore said. "I do," Katz said. "I used to be a Boy Scout. I marked our trail." London looked at him. "A Boy Scout? You?" Katz grinned and armed the concussive grenade and threw it at the mouth of the carcass, crammed with leapers doomed by a hereditary instinct that made them race blindly into the disaster to save their unborn. I said, "used to be." The grenade went off, and, in the billowing smoke, the crew of the Typhoon slipped away into the forest. Alright guys, thanks for watching this episode of Magic After Dark. I think I might finish this story in the next episode, but if you guys enjoyed this one, you can like or hit the subscribe button, or both. And if you want one of your stories read on the show, you can also email me or comment. You can email me at magicafterdark@gmail.com. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.